Hey Vinyl community, this is a response to Juan's first ever VC contest, FilthyIcon321. He said that not many people had entered his contest, and I'm a sucker for trying to win things, I guess. Anyway, he seems like a nice guy. Happy birthday. Very late now, a month late, Juan. Hope your concert was really good. You had two things you wanted to have people talk about in your contest. The first one I'm not so good at, maybe the reissues. And I sort of told my story already in my intro video to the vinyl community, but I'll try to do it a little quicker here in this contest response. Of course, when I was a kid, I grew up listening to music with my folks, and ambiently in the world around, in the car, etc., at school. But one of my favorite memories from childhood was listening to records with my dad on the stereo, and we would lie on the floor in between the speakers and just listen to the music very intently. And that was really meaningful to me as a kid. And that sort of stayed with me, I guess. So my first musical influences were things that I would have been introduced to by him. And then a close friend sort of got me kick-started into some more, some different musical paths. And it's just sort of interesting. You sort of start typically through some fairly time-honored paths into learning about music, and then you start to see what really interests you the most, maybe, and then you start taking some detours and go down some dark alleys musically, and that's where the fun really happens in a lot of ways. Just because some people feel that, a lot of the most popular music is played out or whatever, or we've all heard it so much or seen it so much. There's occasionally talk in the vinyl community of people, like right now, people are talking about being sick of, some people are talking about being sick of some common stuff. But hey, we all started with that stuff in one way or another. And there's, it's good stuff, I don't know. And we all have different taste. And you sort of have to accept that. And I guess it's nice when you could admire when someone has appreciably taken the time to follow their own muse into whatever moves them the most. That always, you respect that in a person when you see that they've done that, even if it's not your cup of tea. You maybe appreciate that they aren't listening to just the same 20 bands that, you would listen to if you were just popped down to earth right now. And in 1 week you'd know about those groups. It's nice anyway, enough about that. So, first things first, the Beatles. This is my favorite Beatles record, the White Album. I would follow that by Revolver, and it gets harder to decide after that. But okay, so the Beatles. That's a perfect way to start getting into music and rock and roll as a kid, I think, or as a teenager. And initially, my path through music was just very, very obvious. Like the Beatles, my favorite Beatle was John Lennon. I then followed John Lennon's solo career. Unfortunately, my favorite John Lennon album is also his first record, a very intense album that he did after the Beatles broke up, where he was going through primal screen therapy, and you definitely hear that in the record. And it really, I really, especially at the time when I was listening to that a lot, really admired the directness of the communication, coming from the radio. I grew up in the New Wave era, and there's a lot of great New Wave music, in my opinion, but it's nice to hearing something just so raw and direct. After the Beatles, this is the big gateway thing that a friend of mine got me into, David Bowie. And he has such an amazing catalog of music. My favorite stuff, honestly, is his stuff in the 70s. He's made some good stuff all throughout his career, though. But anyway, this is a great place to start with David Bowie. This is, except for the fact maybe that it's sort of a concept album or whatever that follows all one theme, the theme of Ziggy Stardust. Not all his albums do that. Some of them do. But these are just great songs. It's a great slice of 73, I think. A lot of his records, this is awesome. I don't know if you'll be able to see this through the plastic, unfortunately, but it says to be played. Oh yeah, there it goes. What the hell is wrong with me? To be played at maximum volume. And there it is. To be played at maximum volume. We can all appreciate that. Okay, so after the typical stuff that you go through with some of the icons like the Beatles and Bowie, I had a huge crush on this girl, and I heard she was into a group called the Smiths. So I picked up their album that was fresh out at that time, this one. And it blew me away. I mean, it starts off with The Queen is Dead, which is this raucous song basically saying, you know, F you to the Queen of England and you know, the time-honored traditions of England and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm dealing with my own life, and these are my problems, and it sucks. It's sort of like, it's sort of a punk kind of attitude. The music isn't anywhere near as harsh as punk, but you can feel that it's still there. Whatever punk started, these are still some of the reverberations of punk. So this was a good gateway into what was then called alternative music in the 80s. That's what it was called in the circles that I was aware of. Anyway, so from the Smiths, I had heard, of course, about the Sex Pistols. And so this, you know, I got this album right when I had dropped out of college. And this was like, I don't know, one of a series of girls that I had crushes on where it was a one-sided thing and it wasn't happening. I dropped out of college, wasn't getting anywhere romantically, and didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life. And this is great for tapping into a lot of that youthful anger, frustration, and not knowing what the heck you're going to do. But then you start to become aware of the history of music and, again, the different ways that you could branch out. There's, you know, early rock and roll, then psychedelia and garage rock, and prog and space rock, and then punk, and then post-punk and new wave. A lot of these terms aren't really great, but then on the other hand, they do give you some vague idea of how to describe certain wide swaths of music. They may not be very accurate, but it's better than nothing, maybe. Anyway, one I had heard of as being really intense and emotional and meaningful, and that's all the kinds of things I was looking for at that time, was Joy Division. This is their first album, their first proper album, that is, their first released album, Unknown Pleasures. And it blew me away. I mean, a lot of these were literally in succession, like favorite albums of mine, period. And for the longest time, this was, I would describe as my favorite album. It's still, you know, have to be in my top 10 or something. I don't know. It's an amazing album. Just dealing with the emotions and despair of life, as well as, I don't know, just not being sure. Oh, this is one of my favorite freaking songs. This album relates to the reissues part of your, and it's perfect timing because after Joy Division, started going in a lot of different directions. I was aware of more kinds of music, and the more I listen to music, the more I realize there's way more than anyone could ever listen to or know about. That's one of the things that's so great about the vinyl community is that you're always going to find out about things that you didn't know about. Sometimes you find out about things that you didn't really give enough of a chance, and once you've heard someone's compelling story of what something means to them, you think, okay, well, I'll give that a chance. And today, we have the ability to look at almost any kind of music on YouTube or whatever and sample it, which we weren't able to do when I was your age, Juan. I mean, we'd read about something in a magazine or maybe a book or an interview with an artist who would mention some of their influences. And then we'd have to scour the used bins trying to find it. And, you know, there's so much stuff that just never turns up in the used bins until, 10 years later. But now you can look up anything and find it and get some idea. And in many cases, it's been reissued, which this is a reissue that's playing now of maybe my favorite album in the world. I mean, I like a lot of instrumental and jazz music, but as far as rock, this is an unsurpassed pinnacle in rock music. Stooges, Funhouse, Iggy. Anyway, so this is a reissue. I bought this for the first time when I was in my early 20s on CD. It was like a nice price CD or something, like $8.99 new in a long box when they still made those things. And it blew me away from right at the beginning. I mean, again, this is just really direct. All the feelings that I was feeling at that time. And I hope you can hear some of that here. Hopefully this won't get cut for copyright. I don't know. Anyway, so I recently in the past year picked this up on vinyl. And I haven't been able to come across a original pressing. So the first reason for reissues to be a good thing is it gives you the opportunity to get a record that you couldn't get otherwise. I mean, I'm sort of glad I'm not a huge prog head because there are a lot of prog records that cost, like $400, $600 for some prog records. That's some obscure Italian, French thing from 1972 that is impossible to find and never been reissued. Well, anyway, when things are reissued, it makes it possible to obtain them. And then the second thing about reissues that can be a good thing is that sometimes it can have extra tracks. And this album, this particular reissue, has a whole extra record of different versions of tracks from the album. So, you get not tired, but you've heard your favorite album over and over and over again. You know every little change in the song. And when there's just one little different thing that doesn't ruin it anyway, it can be just a great experience to be able to re-experience that song for the first time. Anyway, so reissues sometimes give you extra tracks. That's the second thing. Another thing that reissues can do, and this is both good and bad, I guess, is, I have some reissues of things that are on colored vinyl, and I'm a sucker for colored vinyl. I'm colored vinyl's little bitch. I think I've said that before. So that's a fun thing. Especially if the original one would cost $30 or $50, but now you can get a reissue on colored vinyl for $13.99 maybe if you're lucky. That's sort of sweet, there's something nice, like you said, about getting an original edition. You know that this record is 40 years old, or this is the one that came out and had the impact in the first place, and that you wonder what people were going through, the first couple of owners of the record, when they had it, what crisis they were going through when they were listening to that record, what part of their life that record was to them at that time. And then a couple other things that records can be that are reissues is they can, and this relates to both sound and money. Here's a reissue of Miles Davis in a Silent Way, which is one of my favorite Miles records. He's one of those people that when you discover him, you have it's a lifelong journey to keep up with all the different issues and reissues and concerts. I mean, you could be searching for great Miles records all your life. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford a great pressing of this record. I mean, I might come across it in the wild, in nice condition. In a record shop, it's going to cost a lot of money. And it's probably not going to sound as good as this. This is MoFi. These people know what they're doing. So this is a way that you can have that original experience of listening to a great album, and you can sort of make believe that you were alive back then, in my case, or your case, and listen to a record and have it sound as good as, or as close as you can get to a perfect copy of that original record. Also with the Stooges record, this is the old style Electra inner sleeve that they did with that. That could be cool when the reissues replicate the original stuff to that level of detail. This even has the original butterfly Electra label that the original copies would have had. There's another Miles Davis. This is a mono recent Record Store Day numbered pressing. And a mono copy of this, of the original issue, would cost, in great condition, would cost like $500. So, or you can get the reissue. The record's done, and I should be about done. I go on too long, and hopefully someone has stayed to listen. Anyway, so reissues sometimes can come in deluxe conflagrations. That's not the right word. And that can be fun, but also it can be a drag because they can be really expensive. And I don't know. Here's an example of that I have right here. This is not even music. This is Blu-ray. But this is Casablanca, 70th edition, 70th anniversary edition. And it comes with a book, and it comes with a poster, and it comes with coasters, and all that stuff can be cool and fun. But it can just be junk that takes up space, and we're really about listening to the music. And it can cost you an arm and a leg. And again, that's not what it's about. It shouldn't be about costing an arm and a leg, or being worth an arm and a leg even. I mean, I'm tempted, if I have a really expensive record, to sell it and then buy other records. Then you get a reissue and you buy more records. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for getting me to do this, Juan. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody.